A werewolf is what they call him. He was a cop, a necrophile, a serial killer, the most prolific in Russian history, and a rapist, and he wants to be free. We know very little about Mikhail Popkov's background or history. He was born in Angarsk in 1964. He married a woman named Elena, with whom he had a daughter, Ekaterina. Before his capture in 2012, he worked as a police officer in Irkutsk region and as a security guard at two different places. Like many other serial killers before and after him, he was a misogynist, sadist, and he had a hate-on for sex workers. We do not know why in 1992 he began killing, but we do know that from then up to 2010, per his confession, he killed more than 83 people. One of them a policeman, but most of them women the ages of 16 to 40. He would say that he wanted to cleanse the street of prostitutes. Haven't we heard that before? But in actuality, he targeted women who were doing things that he just disagreed with, from prostitution to going to a party without a male escort. So here we have a man in a police uniform, an authority, a misogynist, a psychopath. He goes out at night with that uniform on, hones in on a woman who is doing something he doesn't like, and offers them a lift in his police car. They were not going to head to a police station, though. There would be no booking or charges, no warning. Instead, Popkov would drive them to a remote part of the Irkutsk region where he would force the women to undress. He would kill them with some form of weapon. They varied from baseball bats to knives. Then he would rape the body. The remains were left so mutilated by Popkov that he was called the werewolf, or the Angarsk maniac. He did not hide the fact that his serial killer was on the prowl. The women were discovered in such similar circumstances that it was crystal clear to Russian police that they were looking for one man. They never suspected that it could be one of their own. They inquired and inquired. They interviewed survivors, and there were many, and yet they failed to see the monster in their midst. It would be 20 full years before he was captured. He would often respond to scenes that he left as a serial killer and respond to those as a police officer. One survivor in particular should have clued them in a lot earlier. On January 26, 1998, a 15-year-old named Svetlana was approached by a police officer in a police car who offered to give her a ride. He took her into the woods near the village of Baykalsk and forced her to disrobe. He smashed her head against a tree, at which time she lost consciousness. He probably thought that she had died or would die. She somehow survived, though, naked and injured and below zero temperatures, to be found the next day. She was taken to hospital where she regained consciousness. Despite her statement, which they took only after an extended time, police continued to suspect they were looking for a metal worker, or perhaps a driver or railway employee. And this is because though Svetlana identified Popkov from a photograph, they chose to believe Popkov's wife, who provided the man an alibi. It's not that he left no forensic evidence. The man was careless. There were tracks from a Lada 4x4 at many of the crime scenes. This was a vehicle used by law enforcement. So they began, finally, DNA testing police officers when DNA testing became available. More than 3,500 of them. Active duty officers and those that had quit or retired as well. 3,500 officers from Irkutsk. The testing began in 2012 and Popkov was outed as the killer and captured that same year. Prosecutors would say that his confessions would include taking police to each of the places where he concealed remains and would describe each victim in detail, including identifying tattoos, jewelry, and other features. They were confident, given the detail he provided, that his confessions were accurate. Well, that and they had DNA. He would tell them back then that he had stopped killing because he became impotent. In January 2015, he was tried and sentenced to life in prison for 22 murders and 2 attempted murders. In 2017, he would confess to 59 more murders. With that confession, he officially became Russia's most prolific serial killer, easily surpassing Andrei Chikatilo, the butcher of Rostov, who had 52 victims, and Alexander Petrushkin, the chessboard killer, who had up to 60 victims. Though many in the nation wanted to see Popkov hung, the death penalty was under a moratorium in Russia at the time. He was tried on those 59 murders, but convicted of 56. The police lacked enough evidence on 3 of the murders. He was given another life sentence after trial. At that point, of all of his victims, 14 remained unidentified. Popkov was sent to a prison known in Russia as the Black Dolphin. It's a high-security prison on the border with Kazakhstan, where Russia houses basically the worst of its worst criminals. He was stripped of his police appointment, obviously, but also of his state pension. Near 2020, he was sent to a penal colony in Mordovia to work. Would that be the end? No. In July 2020, Popkov confessed to 2 more killings. At that time, he begged for the death penalty, although it was still not available, and was serving hard labor. He would claim at the time that he did not count the number of his victims, and detectives now believe that his real victim count is close to 200 women plus the 1 policeman. Did he really want to be put to the death penalty, though? Likely not. But it was the only way he could see at the time to be free of confinement. He admitted that he only made the additional confession in a bid to be taken back to Siberia to escort police to further crime scenes as a way of getting a type of vacation from the bleak conditions that he lived in the penal colony. In November 2023, he was on trial, convicted for 3 more killings, receiving an additional 10 years in prison for the slayings. Experts now believe he will continue to ration his confessions to achieve breaks and reprieve from serving hard time in bleak conditions. You would think the man would just resign himself to a life in prison, but no. Russia invaded the Ukraine in February 2022 in what they thought would be a quick takeover of the country. It was not so quick, and Russia has struggled in their attempts to win a war they probably should not have started. This has led to a series of rather bizarre attempts to raise fighters, given their losses. One of those schemes was offering freedom to prisoners willing to go to the front lines. Popkov was right up front with wanting to exchange killing for his freedom if he could survive 6 months on the front lines. He's made the bid twice so far, in January and again in November 2023. Stay tuned for future updates. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying these videos and want more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.